What's up, Tiger fans? It's the Morgan Thomas Show with your host and producer, Morgan Thomas, and my co-host joining me, Big Al, Alan Adams. Welcome to the show, Al.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
Have you heard that we are now a podcast?
That's the rumor, going through the grapevine here. I hear that we're on several platforms as well. Can you tell us a little more about those?
Yeah, so as you know, a few weeks ago, or really towards the beginning of the season, we started partnering with The Roar. And so we took the show that's normally video show, and we took it from that video format and made it into audio and sent it up to The Roar so they could replay it. Because I was already doing the audio, Al, I just said, well, might as well put a podcast out there. We are officially on really most of the major podcasts. You got Apple Podcasts, you got Google Podcasts, Spotify. We're excited about that. Just another way for us to come to you and give you more Clemson content, which is what we're all about. We're going to start off really the first two topics of the night. Clemson drops in the polls, and Andrew Booth rides the bus. Two top headlines on ESPN.com right now. Not really the best look for the Tigers.
Yeah, not real flattering to say the least, but I mean, hey, you provide some good topics for us to go into tonight, so I'm looking forward to it. You want to jump right into Ohio State jumping Clemson?
That's what we're going to do. Is we're going to start with topic number one, Al. After earning a 35-point road win against Louisville, which really was a Louisville team with a winning record, Al. Clemson is now dropping even further, but if you're a fan of the show, it's not a need for panic because we have talked about this for the past couple of weeks that Clemson could possibly continue to win and continue to fall in the AP poll. Now, there's two sides of the argument. So there's the Clemson fan that cares and is really upset and says, this is really something that this shows the bias in the media. But then there's also the other side of the argument, like some people that reminded me on Twitter at Clemson Morgan said, hey, it's no big deal. The poll doesn't matter at all. This is just the AP poll. Wait till the college football playoffs come out. That's when it'll matter. Actually, really, the beginning one doesn't even matter. Let's wait till towards the end of the season. That's what really matters.
I'm definitely on the it doesn't matter side. We talked about this, I think, a week ago, actually, when we were discussing Clemson dropping in the polls. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. We talked about it, and my opinion has not changed. In all honesty, based on, the resume for this year, I think Clemson's right about where they should be. Maybe later on, I hope you'll get into a little bit of a quick hitter kind of top five. I've got my list. I hope you have studied up for yours as well, because, people might be surprised where I have Clemson on my list for sure. But, there's teams where I don't think they deserve where they need to be, that aren't where they deserve to be in this top five already that have come out. But in the end, like we said, if Clemson just wins, it will take care of itself. There's no way an undefeated Clemson team is getting left out of this playoff.
Yeah, according to the ESPN article, really from the Associated Press, Alabama remained number one on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Then you've got LSU at number two. Alabama had 24 first-place votes. LSU had 16 first-place votes. The Buckeyes, Ohio State, had 13 first-place votes at number three. And then Clemson, the preseason number one and defending national champions, had 9 first-place votes and ended up fourth. They also mentioned that this is kind of the closest that the top four have been all year, and that there is a big drop-off between Clemson and number 5, Oklahoma. So it seems like they're kind of lumped those top four into very similar point ranges, or very close point ranges. So maybe they're saying that these teams are so close it's hard to tell, but we're going to put it the way it is right now. My thing about the issue, Alan, is that Alabama is not under the same microscope as Clemson. So It seems like that Alabama's defense is nowhere near what it used to be, barely a top 30 defense. And Alabama is also one of those teams that they didn't have the best performance against, I believe, Mississippi last weekend. And so they turn around, but they don't get any really loss in their first place votes there. They kind of stay at the top. And it's if you're going to say this is a fair comparison of everything. And everybody says, well, you can't say that they're the defending national champions because we're going to start on a blank slate. I'm cool with that. But Alabama needs to start on a blank slate too. Clemson can't be the only team that starts on a blank slate. Ohio State can't be the only team that starts on a blank slate. Same thing with LSU. Can't be the only team that starts on a blank slate. Alabama seems to be the only team that doesn't matter for. They get to stay at the top. And we all know what's going to happen. They've already mentioned it on ESPN. What's going to happen? Alabama, LSU are probably going to coast this weekend. And then they're going to have a bye weekend. And then they're going to play each other on November 9th. So basically the 1-2 is not going to move for 3 weeks. So you're looking at the 1-2 is not going to move until they actually play each other, which is exactly what the media wanted, is to have those top two guys. Not only is it going to be a primetime game, probably Kirk and Chris going to call that game. It's going to be College Game Day, going to be a lot of money made. But I don't think that is exactly the right ranking for those two teams based on the resume that they have right now. And you said your top five. You said you hope that we'll go over a top five, and we will. I have it put down here. And so I want to say this to my Clemson fans. We're a Clemson show, but I kind of agree with you too, Alan. The more I started looking at it, the more I started weeding through, there's not so much a case for Clemson to be number one, really. I mean, other than saying they're the defending national champions and they're going to get it together, which is what most Clemson fans have said, at least from what I can tell, is that Clemson's going to eventually get it together. They're going to eventually have all the pieces go, and they're going to do that, 10-game streak of 20-plus points win games, right? But nobody's for sure on that. That's just what we hope will happen. But let me tell you my top two, Al. And I want to see if this surprises you at all. LSU is my number one. I like LSU. They've got big wins against Texas, which was an away game. They got a win against Florida, which was at home, but it was a really good game. I enjoyed watching both those games. And that was a big game against a non-conference team that was ranked in a Texas team that has kind of fallen down since then, but it was early in the season. I mean, anytime you get a road win like that against a historic program like that and show that you've completely changed your offense was eye-opening for me. And I'm not forgetting about that. Same thing with Florida. Florida stuck with them, but towards the fourth quarter, they took over the game. So I've got LSU with a number 3 in the nation offense. Defense, not so much, but still a top 25 defense. And then I've got Ohio State, which Kirk Herbstreit has been saying Ohio State number 1. They just don't have the resume, I believe, like LSU has yet. I think they obviously have that win against Michigan State, but I feel like Michigan State always flops in big games. And then they do have a blowout win, 42-0 against Cincinnati. So that's why they're my number 2.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty fair. If I were ranking teams this year, I'll give you my top 2 as well. And number 1 is LSU, and that's simply based off resume. I mean, they have the big win against Florida. They have what we think is a big win against Texas. Obviously, Texas has fallen off, but they're still a quality team. And to beat them at Texas, I believe they were playing that game in Texas Stadium. I mean, that's impressive. Texas obviously has a great offense. We know that. They were able to come away with a win. I think they're the only team here that has 2 quality wins, which is why they're number 1, and I don't see any reason they shouldn't be. When I was talking about Clemson fans, shouldn't worry about the polls or anything like that, it's not because I agree with the polls. It's just because, I think their Alabama is held to a different standard than everybody else. It's unfair, but it's not going to matter in the end. I do think they need to change the way they look at things. Alabama, Qualk went on a massive rant today. It was an awesome show with him and Kelly today. And he was talking about Alabama being held to a different standard. He threw out some awesome statistics. So I'd encourage you to go back and check out his show for those. But I have LSU number 1. And it's funny because you have to decide what you want to rate these teams by. Are you rating them by popular wins? Are you rating them by the eye test? What are you going by here? Strength of schedule? I actually have Oklahoma number 2 because, they have a win against Texas as well. And I think that's really the only team other than LSU who has a quality win out of all my top 5 teams. So I actually have Oklahoma number 2. Now, do I think Oklahoma ends up number 2? No, I don't. I think they get a loss in there somewhere. But right now, I've got them at number 2.
Wow, I wasn't really expecting that. I kept Oklahoma as my 5th team with Alabama number 3, Clemson number 4, because Alabama beat Texas A&M at Texas A&M. Clemson's really only high profile game was Texas A&M, which was at home, and Alabama doesn't have that close win. And a close win like that against UNC, while we know there are many rational reasons why that happened, we do also know that it was bad play calling and bad quarterback play and bad offensive line play. All around, 3 bad things all at once in one game led to a 1-point near almost a loss. If it would have got that 2-point conversion, it would have been very difficult to come back. But we came away, Clemson came away with a win. So I have Oklahoma at 5th. They are the number 1 offense in the nation by far. I mean, Jalen Hurts is killing them. They still are top 30 defense, 28th overall defense. So their defense is not as good as their offense, which is kind of what we expected, but not like last year. Last year, they were kind of around the 70 mark. going into the playoffs. I believe now they are in the top 30 in defense, so they're definitely getting a lot better. All centered around, I believe his name's Murray, number 9, I think, over on the Oklahoma defense. That centerpiece in that defensive, 7 there at the linebacker core. He is just amazing. He and Isaiah Simmons, man, if they were both on the same team, it would just be a killer. It'd be unfair to have those two guys at the linebacker position going around the field. But that was kind of rounding out for me: LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Penn State. A lot of people over on YouTube saying, don't worry about it. This is exactly where Clemson needs to be because of that Roy bus, because of that chip on the shoulder type thing, because of that looking forward to playing with, aggression towards proving people wrong. What do you think about that?
No, that is an excellent point. I mean, that's where Clemson wants to be. That's where Dabo wants to be. Dabo has done his best to make sure they're in that position every single year, and it pays off big time. So I'm all for that. I think really if you're going simply by eye test, I took resume a lot into account what's been accomplished on the field this year, which is why I have Oklahoma number 2. But if I were ranking by the eye test, I would say either LSU or Ohio State is number 1. Right now, I have them ranked LSU 1, Oklahoma 2, Ohio State 3, Alabama 4, and Clemson 5. Because basically Ohio State, Alabama, and Clemson, none of them have a signature win to me. Ohio State has looked the best on the field. They've blown pretty much everybody out. And Alabama and Clemson have the same best win, so to speak, and it's Texas A&M. Alabama beat them away. We beat them at home. So I'm giving Alabama the edge there. I think it's all going to work out in the end, and Clemson will get their offense going. They won't, sputter like they have in the first quarter or so in these last few games. Trevor Lawrence is going to get it going, and we're going to jump up the poll. So I'm not worried about that right now. Clemson will be there in the end.